This is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite.
Good evening. President Carter said today he's decided not to build the B-1 bomber fleet, and he believes Congress will go along with him. At a news conference, the president also said the strategic purposes of the B-1 will be fulfilled by deployment of the air-launched cruise missile. Ed Bradley reports.
President Carter brought Defense Secretary Harold Brown with him to his news conference, perhaps to emphasize Brown's support for the president's decision. Mr. Carter had said that decision would probably be made in a very lonely way. Close aides said his inclinations hardened and his opinions gelled over a period of time.
This has been one of the most difficult decisions that I've made since I've been in office. In the last few months, I've done my best to assess all the factors involving production of the B-1 bomber. My decision is that we should not continue with deployment of the B-1, and I am directing that we discontinue plans for production of this weapon system. The Secretary of Defense agrees that this is a preferable decision.
The president indicated his decision was made with a sharp eye towards the Russians and our own defense needs and capabilities.
During the coming months, we will also be able to assess the progress toward agreements on strategic arms limitations in order to determine the need for any additional investments in nuclear weapons delivery systems. In the meantime, we should begin deployment of cruise missiles using air-launched platforms such as our B-52s, modernized as necessary.
Mr. Carter was asked if included in his B-1 decision was a signal to the Soviet Union to speed up the arms limitation talks.
I can't deny that that's a potential factor, but that has not been a reason for my decision. I think if I had looked upon the B-1 as simply a bargaining chip for the Soviets, then my decision would have been to go ahead with the weapon. If, at the end of a few years, the relations with the Soviets should deteriorate drastically, which I don't anticipate, then it may be necessary for me to change my mind. But I don't expect that to occur.
During his campaign, Jimmy Carter called the B-1 a waste of the taxpayers' money, but today indicated he was not wedded to that statement in making up his mind.
Obviously, I've had available to me as president much of the classified analyses and information about weapon systems, which I did not have before. And I try to approach this question with an open mind. I've spent many hours reading those detailed technical reports, the advice of specialists on both sides, an analysis of ultimate cost of weapons. And although, obviously, opinions are always hard to change, I deliberately tried not to let my campaign statements be the factor in this decision.
One aide said nothing in this world is final, but this decision is about as final as you can get. The Air Force will be able to keep its 4 planes for research and development. He said the only alternative would be to get a sledgehammer and go out and smash them. Ed Bradley, CBS News, the White House.
Within hours of the president's announcement, the House passed a $110 billion defense appropriations bill containing almost $2 billion for the B-1. That measure now goes to the Senate in an anticipated fight over deleting that B-1 money. We'll be back in a minute with reports on reaction to the B-1 decision.
I'm a lifeguard. The sun does a bad number on my skin every day, not to mention the salt water. That's why I'm a Rose Milk fan. I rub it all over my hands and body. Rose Milk skincare cream puts back softness in my skin. It helps keep me from peeling. Best of all, I love Rose Milk because it doesn't leave me all greasy.
This summer, put back the softness the sun bakes away. Use Rose Milk skincare cream. Regular or new unscented. You can really feel the difference.
It doesn't cramp my style.
It doesn't cramp my style.
What doesn't cramp my style? Phillips, milk of magnesia. When I have constipation, I rely on Phillips. It really works, and it doesn't interfere with my day.
Phillips formula works a special way that draws your natural body water to where it's needed to soften gently and work effectively. Relieves constipation in hours, usually without cramps. Phillips, regular, chocolate, or mint.
It really works, and it doesn't cramp your style.
Reaction to President Carter's decision on the B-1 bomber came quickly, pro and con. Former President Ford in San Francisco branded it a mistake.
The president's decision to cancel a B-1 bomber is a very risky gamble. He is relying on a B-52 that is 20 years or more older, an aircraft that was developed in the 1950s. He's also gambling on a cruise missile system that is still in the research and development stages. In my opinion, it's too big a gamble.
We have reports, too, from Congress, from the Pentagon, and from the builder of the plane.
A slap in Congress's face. That was the reaction from one Republican leader who noted that just this week the House had voted funds for 5 B-1s.
To me, the way in which the president has made this announcement is rank amateurism.
I was pleased. I commend the president on his courageous decision.
I don't admire a president who puts his campaign promises before the good of his country.
He's not only saved the country tens of billions of dollars in foreclosing a needless weapon system, but in the process, he has protected his own credibility.
And their fighter pilots in their briefing rooms all across Western Russia and Siberia are cheering because they know what an easier problem they have to shoot down a big old B-52 than they ever would have had to contend with a B-1.
Going in with a B-1 bomber would be a suicide mission. So I think that there's no jubilation, no cause for jubilation in the Soviet Union. I think if they're breaking out the vodka, it's to drown their tears.
The Democratic chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, George Mahon, served notice today that he will resist any effort to eliminate B-1 funds from the final military appropriations bill. However, B-1 advocates concede that the president probably has the votes to sustain his decision, and even if Congress does end up ordering the president to go ahead, expenditures could be delayed easily until next year. Bill Jones, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
Stunned disbelief. That was the reaction of Air Force brass when they got the word of the president's decision just seconds before the news conference. The generals believed the president would build perhaps half the 244 bombers they sought. But Defense Secretary Harold Brown recommended to the president that he drop the B-1 and approve instead the cruise missile as the cheapest, most effective way of adding punch to America's deterrent forces. When Brown was Air Force Secretary in the 1960s, he pushed for a new strategic bomber, but this was before the development of the cruise missile. Apparently, the cruise, a modern-day version of the pilotless World War II buzz bomb, changed Brown's mind about the need for a new manned bomber. Launched from a B-52, current cruise models have a range of some 700 air miles. Later versions may be able to fly up to 1,500 miles to targets and to deliver nuclear bombs with pinpoint accuracy. Thus, the B-52s, far away from targets, would face less risk from enemy air defenses. The Air Force has begun modernizing its fleet of B-52s, many of them veterans of Vietnam action. The first cruise missile B-52 combinations are due to be deployed in June 1980, but that program may now be accelerated. One of the big factors in the president's decision, according to the sources, was cost. A single B-1 is priced at over $100 million. The cruise, $500,000 each. Ike Pappas, CBS News, the Pentagon.
This morning's test flight of the B-1 from Edwards Air Force Base was just about the only sure thing left in the project. Research and development will continue, but no one seems to know for how long. At Rockwell's B-1 headquarters, engineers en route to work weren't sure how much longer their jobs would last, and they seemed shocked.
It's like I better start looking for something else, I guess.
It was a surprise. I didn't expect him to stop it completely.
Well, I voted for him. I thought he was smarter than this, so.
B-1 Division President Bastian Hello claimed the announcement caught him by surprise. He said he was given no advance warning by the White House. He offered this estimate of the immediate impact of the president's decision.
That impact will in all probability mean, when we get our instructions through our contract, immediate layoff of about 8,000 people out of a workforce of some 13,000 that we have now.
One union official said loss of the contract will cause thousands of workers to leave California in search of new jobs. Nationally, over a 10-year period, he claimed, it would affect 17 states and that 291,000 jobs will not now be created. As work went forward on the fourth plane, and probably the last model of the B-1, one Air Force officer on the project scribbled the following epitaph on his desk pad. D-Day. Carter says no to B-1. 6 years down the tubes. Murray Fromson, CBS News, El Segundo, California.
6 years and almost $4 billion in development costs. Trading in Rockwell International stock, by the way, was halted for 4 hours today after President Carter's announcement. The stock closed down 4 3/8 points.
Jenner makes his run to the bar. He's over at 6'8 1/4. Jenner plants. He's got the lift. He's cleared 15.9. What a day for Bruce Jenner. Jenner's won the Olympic decathlon.
I put in 12 years of training getting ready for that day and downed a lot of Wheaties. In fact, Wheaties has been on my breakfast table since I was a kid because a complete Wheaties breakfast is good for you and good tasting too.
Take it from Bruce Jenner. Wheaties is the breakfast of champions.
My dentures got so dingy and yellow I hardly ever smiled. People stopped calling me Smiley and started calling me Curly. Then I started brushing with Denture Cream. Denture Cream's anti-yellowing formula gets rid of dingy yellow film. And Denture Cream helps keep the yellow from coming back because it polishes better. Better than ever. Yellow dentures took away my smile. Denture Cream's anti-yellowing formula gave me back my smile.
Dinner's ready, Smiley.
The rest of Mr. Carter's news conference ranged from foreign policy to monogamy. One topic given emphasis was a diplomatic flap earlier this week involving administration criticism of Israel's Mideast negotiating stance. And the president tried today to patch things up. Hal Walker has the story.
Anticipating a meeting here with Israel's new Prime Minister, Menachem Begin, next month, Mr. Carter said that he and his aides would not comment in detail on American support of Middle East peace efforts.
I believe that it's been good during this year to have the discussions much more open, to encourage the Arab nations and Israel to frankly understand some of the feelings that each of them has toward the other. And I still have high hopes that this year might lead toward peace, but it will never be with any sort of abandonment of our deep and permanent commitment to Israel. And I have made this clear in specific terms to every Arab leader who's been to our country.
On Sino-American relations, the president sidestepped the question of whether this country can normalize relations with China while keeping a defense commitment to Taiwan, saying only that he hopes to achieve full diplomatic relations with Peking and still make sure that the peaceful lives of the Taiwanese are maintained. On Middle East oil prices, Mr. Carter said they are too high, but he said he hoped for a price freeze through 1978. Mr. Carter was optimistic about a Panama Canal treaty, adamant on his human rights stand toward the Soviet Union, and explained his decision to pay $6,000 in taxes he didn't owe as symbolic of his belief that everyone in his income bracket should pay some tax. Then there was this question about morality.
President, Panex Newspapers has a tape-recorded statement by Dr. Peter Bourne that even though your own relationship is monogamous, you never held anything against people in your organization who were involved promiscuously with other women. My question is Dr. Bourne right or wrong in this recorded statement?
He's certainly right in part of it. My relationship is monogamous. I've never held it against people who had a different standard from myself. I've done everything I could, properly and legitimately, to encourage my staff members' families to be stable, and I have also encouraged the same sort of thing in my cabinet. If there are some who've slipped from grace, then I can only say that I'll do the best I can to forgive them and pray for them.
Hal Walker, CBS News, the White House.
The background of this week's diplomatic flap with Israel from Marvin Kalb.
Indirectly, the president seemed to be admitting that Monday's policy statement was a blunder. Officials reveal that the statement was initiated by the president's own national security advisors, Zbigniew Brzezinski, and that it was Brzezinski who added the section most critical of Israeli leaders. namely the warning that the subject of Israeli withdrawal from the West Bank cannot be excluded from the negotiation. It's understood that Brzezinski wanted to aim his criticism directly at Prime Minister Begin and Foreign Minister Dayan, but high State Department officials objected and penciled out the names. The president himself did not read the statement until after it had been delivered. It created such controversy, most of it unexpected as well as counterproductive, that Mr. Carter decided to put the lid on all of his top deputies until Prime Minister Begin's visit here in 3 weeks. Marvin Kalb, CBS News, the State Department.
The UN Security Council, by a unanimous vote, has endorsed a resolution urging member states to help Mozambique, which has come under increased border attacks from Rhodesia. The resolution called for material assistance, which a U.S. diplomat said meant anything but troops. There were 2 reports today of military invasions in East Africa. Diplomats in Ethiopia said that hostile elements, believed to be Sudanese, had occupied the Ethiopian town of Beka. And Kenya charged that 10,000 troops from Somalia had crossed into northern Kenya. Somalia denied that and speculated the invaders were from Ethiopia.
Well, the higher coffee prices go, the more you need Mr. Coffee. Mr. Coffee, with this exclusive coffee saver, saves coffee, saves money. 2 ways. First, percolators make you use up to 50% more coffee per potful than Mr. Coffee. Second, with Coffee Saver, you make only the exact number of cups you want. That's great. Remember, Mr. Coffee with Coffee Saver saves coffee, saves money.
1 ounce of Total gives you 100% of the recommended daily allowance of all these important vitamins and iron.
Yeah?
I'll pour this leading natural cereal. Stop me when you think the vitamin value equals Totals.
Okay. No.
Not yet.
Tough.
Nope.
This is unreal.
It takes at least 16 ounces of any of the leading natural cereals to equal the vitamins in 1 ounce of fortified Total.
Wow, what a difference.
That's the total difference.
Reversing a Ford administration policy, Transportation Secretary Brock Adams today ordered that all new cars eventually be sold with airbags or some other so-called passive restraint. Nelson Benton has more on the story.
Adams' ruling requires automatic crash protection for front seat occupants in all 1984 model passenger cars, with the requirement to be phased in starting with 1982 models. The airbag, a balloon-like envelope that inflates at the instant of collision, is best known and the most thoroughly tested system. But a so-called passive seatbelt available on some Volkswagen models also meets automatic protection criteria.
Too many people have been needlessly killed or injured in crashes where passive restraints could have saved them. I simply cannot, in good conscience, be a party to any further delay.
Adams estimates additional cost at $100 to $300 per car. His schedule calls for automatic protection on standard and luxury size 82 models, on mid-size and compacts in the 83 model year, and on subcompacts 1 year later.
That means that Americans who are interested in buying smaller cars and fuel-efficient cars and who don't have the money to buy larger cars don't get the protection from these federal safety standards that richer people get by buying the largest cars.
What should it have been?
It should have been a mandatory automatic safety system at the latest for all cars by 1981 models.
Among the big 3, Chrysler was most critical, calling for seatbelt buckle-up laws instead. General Motors was lukewarm. Ford did not comment immediately. By mid-afternoon, a resolution was introduced in Congress to upset Adams' ruling. Nelson Benton, CBS News, Washington.
The House Ways and Means Committee today completed action on the tax portion of President Carter's energy plan. The bill gives him most of what he wanted, including a tax on gas-guzzling cars, but not a tax on gasoline tax to encourage conservation. Chairman Al Ullman called the bill, quote, the first signal that Congress is dead serious about saving energy. The Carter Energy Plan envisions more use of coal and thus more mining of coal. A Congressional Conference Committee today agreed on a compromise bill to force mining companies to restore land ravaged by strip mining. The Supreme Court has recessed for the summer, not to return to work until October. Law correspondent Fred Graham looks back over the just completed term at the major rulings and the justices who made them.
Richard Nixon has been gone from Washington for 3 years now, but his legacy remains at the Supreme Court, where the dominant force has become the conservatism of his 4 appointees, Chief Justice Warren Burger, who seeks to unburden the courts, but whose critics say he does it by trying to throw out the cases of environmentalists, consumer advocates, and civil libertarians, William Rehnquist, the court's most conservative justice, who chills liberals because he's also the youngest and one of the smartest, Lewis Powell, a Southern aristocrat who approaches each case with a judiciously open mind and then usually takes the conservative position, and Harry Blackmun, once seemingly under Burger's conservative influence, who has recently taken more unpredictable positions. With the Nixon 4 often voting in a block, a 5th vote could usually be found from one of the more middle-of-the-road justices, Potter Stewart, Byron White, or John Paul Stevens, who emerged as one of the most creative and independent figures on the court. That left the 2 liberal holdovers from the Warren era, William Brennan and Thurgood Marshall, usually teamed up in lonely dissent. The result was that this term, lower courts were repeatedly reversed for being too liberal, for going too far. One dominant thread ran through the court's frequent refusals to rule for those who asserted individual rights. It was that courts should not decide sensitive social questions because, as Justice Powell put it, the appropriate forum in a democracy is the legislature. This was the court's message as it ruled that poor women do not have a constitutional right to abortions paid for by the state, that medical disability plans do not have to include maternity benefits, that severe paddling of public school students is not cruel and unusual punishment, that employees can be fired for refusing for religious reasons to work on Saturdays, and that union seniority agreements can be enforced even if they discriminate against blacks and Mexican Americans. This has touched off a heated debate as to whether the court has abandoned its proper role.
Many of the individual decisions are troubling in themselves, but more troubling by far is this trend that is emerging of the Supreme Court's abdication of its constitutional role as a check on majority sentiment.
This is basically a society that is run by democratic processes. And the court is simply saying that the Constitution does not remove these issues from the area of democratic government. And that's why it is not for the court to do it. It is for legislatures and executives who have been elected to decide yes or no as to those rights.
Toward the end of the term, the court's familiar conservatism produced a series of clear signals for a slowdown in the busing of school children. And then, perhaps because judges of all persuasions dread to be involved in the taking of human life, the justices declare that executions will not be permitted for the crime of rape, and by inference for no crime short of murder. Fred Graham, CBS News, at the Supreme Court.
There's been no word on that girl kidnapped from a Florida scout camp since last night when she telephoned her parents to say she would be freed soon. Police are continuing the search, but one officer conceded that, quote, it's a waiting game now. The Dow Jones Industrial Average pushed up by almost 3 points today. Volume on the New York Stock Exchange was 19,400,000 shares. The average price per share climbed 12 cents on the New York Exchange, 7 cents on the American.
Marion, look what I just got for Amy.
Oh, pretty. But how's the new mother?
Frankly, I could sure use a book on laxatives.
Haven't you heard about X-Lax pills?
Pills?
They're gentle, easy to take, and contain a medically proven effective ingredient.
Medically proven effective?
Think of it this way, Helen. X-Lax gently stimulates your system's own regular rhythm for relief in the morning.
X-Lax pills. You learn something new every day.
Lots of folks need help now and then.
Margaret, you have bugs in your house?
Certainly not.
But you have working every month.
That's why I don't have bugs in my house.
When things they crawl, gotcha off the wall, there's a famous name that you can call. Orkin. We're #1. We get the job done. We're Orkin.
Nothing's too good for your house, is it, Margaret?
That's right.
When you call Orkin, you get the world's #1 pest control company.
Big #1.
The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, which has had a hand in many changes in American society, is undergoing a transition of its own. Rene Poussaint reports from St. Louis.
After 22 years, this is Roy Wilkins' last convention as head of the NAACP.
Wilkins steps down amidst reports of an NAACP in trouble, plagued by internal power struggles and external attacks. At 75, Wilkins, a quiet, reserved man, says he's grown impatient with his countrymen's continuing conflicts over equal rights.
It has taken them so long to make up their minds. And I feel that we ought to hurry along with it and get it over with.
Mr. Wilkins, I wish you hadn't done so well, and it wouldn't be so hard for me to follow you.
Wilkins' successor is Benjamin Hooks, 52, an outspoken lawyer, federal communications commissioner, and minister.
But I know, Brother Roy, that you've seen the lightning flash, and you've heard the thunder roar, and you've felt sin's breakers dash and trying to conquer your soul, but you heard the voice of Jesus telling you still to fight on, and he promised never to leave you, never to leave you alone.
Hooks has his work cut out for him. NAACP membership has dropped to some 425,000, down by 100,000 since 1963. At the same time, convention delegates must come up with strategies to handle some major civil rights legislative setbacks and a steady resistance to desegregation in the North. Hooks says he'll use the most effective tactics to turn things around, whether they fit the NAACP's so-called moderate image or not.
I'm saying positively there will be plenty of action. So the people who are racist, the people who practice discrimination and segregation, the people who want to put black folk off in the corner better beware, because we're on our way.
Most of the delegates at this convention seem ready to go with Hooks. So far, the change in leadership is working as the orderly transition NAACP officials say they planned. Hooks says the new NAACP must strengthen its involvement in Southern Africa and perhaps loosen its ties with certain traditional domestic allies, such as organized labor and the Democratic Party. NAACP officials say they no longer have time for fair-weather friends. Renee Poussaint, CBS News, St. Louis.
And that's the way it is. Thursday, June 30th, 1977. This is Walter Cronkite, CBS News. Good night.
Can what you eat and drink affect the way you feel? Of course. Millions of caffeine-concerned Americans, like me, have taken their doctor's advice and switched to Sanka brand decaffeinated coffee. It's 100% real coffee. I love the fresh flavor. And with Sanka brand, there's no caffeine to make me nervous, and I really feel good. Sanka brand is the coffee you can feel good about.
Sam's always liked Gravy Train, and now there's a new, improved Gravy Train. Watch what happens when I give Sam a choice. James just added a natural beef flavor, so it tastes better, wet or dry. It even looks different. Okay, Sam, now. He likes it, but does he love it? He loves it. Fully nutritious, too. New Gravy Train dog food with natural beef flavor. A big improvement in taste. Right, Sam?
This has been the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite. For the latest news early, watch the CBS Morning News with Hughes Rudd and Bruce Morton.
Who's nutty? Who's normal? Who cares? It all comes out comedy on the Bob Newhart Show, Saturdays at 7:30 on the CBS Television Network.
Stay tuned for Eyewitness News, next on Channel 5, WTVF, Nashville.